All right, we've got the closing bells here down on Wall Street and in Midtown at the Nasdaq market site. Wrapping up what's been an eventful week of trading. I think when all the dust settles, we take a look at where the major averages are. Going to be not a whole lot going on. Yesterday's action, though, quite interesting. Of course, followed it here on Yahoo Finance during Thursday's trading session. But joining us now to talk about the week that was, Jared Blikre stopping by. Jared.
Thank you. It has been quite the eventful week. Dow Jones earlier this week, I remember saying 2 record highs in a row, and then we kind of fell off a little bit. This is a 5-day view. So we got to the peak on Wednesday around the open or Tuesday close, and it's been downhill since there. But you see, we're still ending up with gains of about 1/3 of 1%. Now here's the Nasdaq. That is ending in the red for these 5 days, so down about 0.5%. S&P 500, which lost about 0.5 or 0.05, so just 5 basis points, barely in the green there. So really not a lot of action if you look at the weekly chart from the close last week, but under the hood, we're seeing a lot here, Miles. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the themes of the week. Yeah. And let's just start. You mentioned here the technical side of it. And I saw more flash headlines this week about technical level this, technical level that than I can remember. And it feels like we're in that market environment where maybe the bulls aren't in total control, but the bears can't assert themselves either.
That's a good way to put it. And let's start with the 50-day moving average, because that was the key level that was in play. I saw a lot of headlines, and basically that has been in flux. Let me just give you a year-to-date chart here, and I can put the 50-day right on the Wi-Fi interactive. There we go. And you can see how we are touching it right now. In fact, we were touching it yesterday when we were doing our Invest seminar with, and we had a segment with Kenny Polcari, and he was noting that we are still just perched right above it. And let's listen to what he had to say about it.
What you see is that the S&P remains above it. It keeps kind of testing it, never really kissing it or piercing it, but it's testing it. What you want to look for is right now where you can see we're just about to kiss the trend line. And what's going to be important in that is, does it hold or does it fail? If it fails, here's what typically happens. You get the algos that will kick in because we've had a technical failure on the chart, and then you'll get the algos that just operate based on a mathematical formula that will see that there's a failure and they'll go into sell mode.
Yeah, what I love about that, and I've dialed this down to a 2-month chart with candlesticks, you can see if you squint that we pierced it twice. That was a week ago, last Friday, and today, but we have closed above it. So the algos did not get that closing a little below it, and so maybe a little short covering rally intraday here, but you know, par for the course.
Yeah, and essentially the way that I always think about the 50-day is, let's call it the short-term, it's the short-term direction of the market overall, right? So the trend right now on a short-term basis, based on what we've seen, remains higher. All right, what else we got for this week?
All right, we got to take a look at the VIX because that was spiking higher earlier today. I think we settled right around the 20 level. Let's see what the high actually was, and I believe it was 23. So here's, again, a 2-month chart, and this is pretty good here. This was the China scare from a few weeks ago. That was a Friday afternoon thing, and you don't see, you know, in the grand scheme of things, this is not a big move, but I would say that this is a trend of higher highs and higher lows, and so that is an uptrend, and we are still in the season when the VIX tends to spike. It's not just October, but also November.
And so again, the thing with the VIX is it doesn't necessarily say whether stocks are going up or down, but it does say that the volatility of the market is on the move higher, and generally in the short term, that has tended to be associated with, you know, more negative momentum, you know, in some of these time frames.
And what Steve Sosnick's like to say is that the VIX is not a fear index, but it's a 30-day gauge of institutional hedging pressure. And so they were definite. You know, that doesn't roll off the tongue.
I'm always walking around thinking about my gauges of institutional selling pressure. All right, last thing for today.
Yeah, we got to get to crypto because Bitcoin 95,000. This has been I don't want to call it a stair step down because it hasn't been that orderly, but as I like to say, Bitcoin really known for its fake outs to the upside and to the downside. Over these 5 days, it's down 11%. Let me just show you a 6-month chart here because we got a head fake to the upside. It looked like we were breaking out, then boom, came down, and this has been a textbook downturn. The sellers have come in exactly where they should have, and my key levels here are 105 to 110. That's where the sellers would reemerge again, and then above 115, that's when they have to scramble.
Can we also look at Bitcoin on a longer term? I'm thinking 2-year time frame, and specifically that because something that you put in our chat earlier today is that At one point this morning, Bitcoin had wiped out its gains for 2025. I believe at 94.4 we're still positive for the year, but
let's
that's
just look at
going to be one of these psychological. Look
basis
at
points.
that.
There you go.
So basically, we started this year at exactly where we sit today. Now, again, calendars are arbitrary. Bitcoin trades 24/7. But just as you think about any kind of major asset on the scale that Bitcoin is now, within the context of big portfolios, going from being up 20%, okay, futures here, Genius Act, all this stuff. I mean, you got nothing for Bitcoin this year.
And let me show you another thing here. This is how much each of these coins are down from their 52-week highs. And you can see Bitcoin down 25%, Ethereum down 36%, Solana 52%, Cardano's in there somewhere down 60%. So Bitcoin is actually one of the least dirty shirts in the laundry basket here. It is really a different story for a lot of these coins right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the more that Bitcoin starts to become just an institutional asset, the more it's going to look, I don't know, like gold or like tech. It's basically like the slightly levered Nasdaq right now, and it really is divorced on a price basis from its smaller peers over here.
What I would love to see is if Bitcoin can figure out what it wants to be correlated to long term, because it just switches all the time. Sometimes it's stocks, sometimes it's gold, sometimes it's an inflation hedge, and sometimes you just got to hodl it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jared Blikre, thanks so much for the update. All right, well, all eyes are on Nvidia ahead of its earnings report on Wednesday afternoon. That'll be a key test for the AI trade that has powered markets most of this year, really for the last couple of years. And for more, we're going to bring in Matt Bryson. He's Managing Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. Matt, thanks so much for hopping on. So just as you look at the quarter for Nvidia next week, what are a couple of things that you and your team are going to be looking at for a sense of not just their own business, but what Nvidia can tell us, let's say, about the broader AI spend right now?
Well, I mean, Nvidia is by far the largest supplier in the market. So I think what they tell us is going to really be a good indicator of where AI spending is right now. And I think they're going to have very positive things to say. So we've done checks in Taiwan. The Taiwanese supply chain is continuing to see upward momentum. Had conversations with people selling into their products in the US. The same thing. We've heard it publicly from the CSPs, right? They are spending more on AI. You've heard from companies like Supermicro, where they're expecting sales to roughly double Q on Q, tied to better shipments of pretty much NVIDIA AI racks. And so I think NVIDIA is going to have really positive things to say about Q3, Q4.
I'm curious how you think about the stock at this point. And I ask because when you look at NVIDIA on a valuation basis, we always have this conversation. It's pretty reasonable, especially against a lot of its peers, and really where the stock has been over the last couple of years. It's grown into that valuation and more than in some cases. How do you think about just the stock today, what you're paying for as an investor? Again, trading about 28 times, which compared to what else you can see out there is not crazy.
Yeah, no, so it's not expensive on an earnings basis. The concern that's been around for the last couple months is just the revenue numbers are getting so big that they require so much spend from these companies putting in data centers, and where's the funding going to come from? And that's I mean that is a legitimate concern. Having said that, it's a bigger concern if there's not revenue generated. And if we had this discussion a year ago today, you would be pointing out the fact that a lot of this infrastructure is going to supporting training, which doesn't generate revenue. But now what we're starting to see is that inference workloads are building. Those are what generate revenue. It's what generates profit. And it should be what funds that debt that's being used to pay for these data center buildouts.
And then thinking about NVIDIA specifically and their product roadmap, what are you expecting to see in terms of the discussion around Blackwell sales versus thinking ahead to where Rubin fits in and just NVIDIA's own product velocity here?
I think at this particular venue, right, their Q3 earnings, we're going to hear a whole lot more about Blackwell. With Rubin, it's really starts as a second half 26 story. I think that we see the larger revenue get generated in the 2027 timeframe. So it's still a bit out. Rather, where I think we're going to get tangible, better results or better expectations is the B300, right? So their next iteration of Blackwell, where it sounds like things are ramping really well.
And then finally, just on the China side of it, we still see that story just a little bit just unclear, I guess. I feel like I kind of lose track of exactly where we sit, other than it doesn't seem like Nvidia has any visibility into sales in China. How are you thinking about that part of the story right now, with those non-realized revenues, let's call them, now seemingly comfortably into the tens of billions of dollars?
Yeah, I think everyone's taken China revenues out of numbers. And so if at any point China becomes an opportunity again, that's all a bonus for Nvidia. I think the other thing to think about, though, is one of the concerns had been that you'd end up with these dual tracks where you've got a China track and a US track, and that China would really offer other countries a path to AI if the US didn't. What we're starting to hear, particularly this week, you had the Wall Street Journal talking about the fact that China has some bottlenecks. And so, well, it's not a great thing that Nvidia still can't sell into China. From an Nvidia perspective, I think some of the concerns around might there be roadblocks in other countries, or could China potentially pick off some of the revenues in other geographies, that some of that fear should be dissipated.
All right, we'll leave it there. Matt Bryson with Wedbush. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, we'll check in on how flight delays could impact your Thanksgiving travel. That's next on Market Domination Overtime. Eric Trump, co-founder and chief strategy officer of American Bitcoin, and the company's executive chairman, Asher Knut, joined Yahoo Finance Invest to talk about the business behind Bitcoin and where the industry goes next.
We mine Bitcoin so cheaply because we've got cheap energy. And by the way, isn't it nice to be able to do that in the United States of America, where we actually have favorable energy policy? We haven't had that for a very long time. You see it with oil and gas and everything else coming down to record lows right now. It's a beautiful thing to see. America has to lead the way. Energy cost is everything. Energy cost is directly correlated with GDP. The lower the energy you have, the higher your GDP, and that's what we want for this country. So we're doing it in West Texas using some of the lowest energy costs. Brian, we're mining Bitcoin for roughly 50 cents on the dollar to the average, to the spot price of BTC. Every single day, 24 hours a day, we're mining Bitcoin and we're adding it. And we believe this asset's going to be transformational. Listen, a little while ago, I looked at the exact price of Bitcoin 2 years ago from today. You know what it was? It was 36,500, and now it's sitting at 105, 104, bouncing around. It was up past 120 a month ago. Bitcoin has been one of the greatest assets of our time, and even now, as you see volatility, which you always see in cryptocurrency, because naturally a slightly higher vol, we're still 170, 180, 190% higher than we were at this exact date 2 years ago. And I think that speaks to the fact that everybody around the world wants it. Every Fortune 500 company is putting it on their balance sheet. Every family office is buying more and more. People are hoarding it. And this isn't just in the United States. This is all around the world. It's an incredibly exciting asset class. And I believe in Bitcoin with every aspect of my heart and soul.
Eric, you know everybody in this industry, of course. Earlier on, we kicked off our conference with Michael Saylor, a.k.a. the Bitcoin King. He really made a strong case that more companies need to have Bitcoin on their balance sheets. Do you have Bitcoin on the balance sheet of the Trump organization? And if not, why not?
We have a ton of it on the balance sheet. I'm incredibly proud of that. I've got a ton of it on my own personal balance sheet. And, and obviously I'm going all in terms of American Bitcoin. I mean, we're setting up the greatest Bitcoin company in America, listed on the Nasdaq, ABTC, using Hut 8's infrastructure. Asher is one of the best people in energy anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. And we're mining it, as I said before, for roughly 50 cents on the dollar. There is no one doing it that's better than us. There's no one that's doing it with more passion than us. There's no one who's doing it quicker than us. Listen, we've been listed for under 3 months at this point. And every single day, it seems like we're passing another company. And these are major companies that you know about. And so we're climbing that ladder very, very quickly. And again, our success thus far is beyond incredible.
Asher, let me get you into this conversation. Just before you came on, we had Mark Palmer really make a strong bullish case for your company and what you're doing. For those not familiar, where is your infrastructure situated? And then day to day, what do your operations do?
we run sites all across North America. We have sites in Texas, we have sites in New York, we have sites across Alberta and across all of North America. Our sites are split up in power generation, so we own power plants, and also data center capacities. Data centers that power Bitcoin and the network that everyone relies on in order to securitize Bitcoin, the asset, and then also sites that we're building data centers for that are powering AI use cases as well. We're a believer at HUT that energy is the fuel that powers all future technologies, and we want to be in the center of technology and power.
Asher, you're building a pretty substantial site, I believe, in Louisiana. Do you have a tenant for that yet?
We have not announced the tenant for that yet, but as everyone knows, power is extremely scarce right now. It's a really large campus in Louisiana with near-term power. And so we'll share more about who's going to go there in short order, but we've already started moving ground, construction on the site, and building a lot of the electrical infrastructure.
Meta's nearby, Asher. Is it Meta? I have to ask.
We haven't shared who it is, and we will soon.
Fair enough. Look through, seen through your prism. We've been talking all day long about an AI bubble. Is that talk ridiculous?
I think in any large-scale wave and systematic shift, you're going to see building. And I think people are saying, how much money is going into this infrastructure? Our belief is AI is going to fundamentally change the way that we operate in the world, the way that normal people transact, how they transport themselves from location to location, how they work in the workplace, at home. And so we think AI is just at its beginning innings of its impact on the world and on society. And in order for that impact to happen, we need to build data centers to power that compute. And so the question is, are there too many data centers being built? Are there use cases already happening? People need to invest today for where the future is going. And so we think we're still at the beginning of that investment cycle and that integration into what AI is actually going to do for the average person.
Are there too many data centers being built?
We have not enough data centers being built. We need more power generation in the US, we need more transmission, and we need more data center capacity.
Eric, let me get back to you here. How do you see crypto changing the future of the financial services industry?
Well, first of all, I think it's going to onboard trillions of dollars into the U.S., right? That's happening every single day. No country wants their own home currency other than obviously the U.S. dollar. No one wants a euro. No one wants the pound. No one wants any of the Asian currencies. Guess what they want? They want the U.S. dollar, and so you have stable coins every day that are bringing trillions of dollars every year. That's bringing trillions of dollars onto American shores. You're going to see more and more of that happening. Second of all, the speed of Binance is going to go up. There's not going to be waiting, 36 hours, 48 hours over the course of a weekend to be able to send out a wire transfer. That's going to become instantaneous. Fees are going to go down. Convenience is going to go massively up. So much of the blockchain technology is going to tokenize assets. We're seeing that every day. In fact, some of our buildings are being tokenized for the first time. And I think you're going to have this major shift to Bitcoin as truly the digital gold. I think you're seeing more and more money that will ultimately come out of gold, and you're going to see that ratio disproportionately shift into Bitcoin because it's been the single greatest asset that we've seen, and it solves a lot of the problems that physical gold has, including weight and transferability and so many other things, right? The ability to monetize, speed of monetization, and so again, you're going to see crypto literally change every aspect of our financial system, and it couldn't come quickly enough. I think we're wholly behind. The banks have been antiquated for too long. The banks have frankly been the monopolies that actually have been a disservice to ordinary people who don't have maybe the Trump last name and don't have a lot of zeros on their balance sheet, who get zero advantage and have been put at actually a massive disadvantage. And there's no question that every single day you see another widget popping up on your Amazon cart being able to transact in either Bitcoin or stablecoin. Crypto is here to stay. Crypto is the future of finance. And American Bitcoin, in terms of what we're doing, being able to mine it cheaper than virtually anyone, we are going to lead the way. We are going to lead the way, and America is going to lead the way, which makes me incredibly happy as a person who loves that flag right behind my shoulder.
All right, airlines are expecting to fly a record-setting 31 million passengers between November 21st and December 1st. That's according to the points guy. But airlines are still needing time to find their footing after the government shutdown.
There's no flipping the switch. We got crews that we got to get back ready for because we've been taking flights out for a couple of days, in advance in time, and now we got to see if we can get those crews back on schedule. It'll take several days.
All right, for more on what's next for airline flights, we welcome in the Points Guy Director of Content, Eric Rosen. So Eric, day-by-day situation here for the airlines, for airports, a week out from the beginning of that Thanksgiving travel season. What are we seeing today in terms of delays, cancellations? Just what's the status for folks right now?
The good news is we are headed in the right direction. As Ed Bastian just said, it's not like flipping a light switch, but it's sort of like a dimmer that's slowly getting brighter. Whereas yesterday we saw about 1,300 flights canceled and 2,300 flights delayed within the U.S. or into and out of the U.S. Today we're at about 970 cancellations and 600 cancellations in the U.S. and about 2,000 delays. Still not great news for those people on those flights, but we're going down in terms of those numbers. And I just remind folks that the FAA had mandated that flights were cut by about 10% today originally, but they've only been cut to about 6%. We were allowed to hold steady at the 6% mark that they had set for Tuesday. So the cancellations haven't gotten worse. We haven't had any major weather events to throw the system off even further. So things should start smoothing out hopefully soon.
So, you talked about the mandated fewer flights that was earlier this week. I'm curious just from like how you guys see it on what that cascade is when, okay, this flight is canceled. It takes this plane out of service for this. How long does it take for that whole cascade of events to kind of right-size itself, especially, with a domestic network at least that is so much about, what all the airlines call the hub and spoke, right? You're getting through a place. Everyone goes through Denver to go somewhere else, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, sure. Well, I wouldn't want to be an airline's operations employee this week because it's bound to be headache after headache. Obviously airlines, a lot of them operate, as you mentioned, hub and spoke, right? So when one of those flights gets canceled, that spoke is missing and you've got to reroute people to different places. And planes aren't like, throwing a car on a tow truck and bringing it somewhere else. You've got to get it up in the air to another airport. So it's likely to take some time for those networks to smooth themselves out. A lot of the flights that were canceled or delayed tended to be those smaller regional flights. So airlines really tried to keep a lot of their mainline jets, those big ones, either Boeing 737s or A320s, and their international flights operating pretty much on schedule, with normal delays and cancellations, inevitable. So once those regional networks get back to full steam, things will be a lot smoother as well, but it's bound to take some time, of course. And of course you had, crew that you've got to get into certain areas too. It's not just about where the passengers are, it's where that equipment is and where your crew is as well.
All right, now this morning when we were talking about this segment, big debate, of course, among the team. TSA PreCheck, is it worth it? Where are we at with all that? Everyone has their own theory. I have my own on that. As we head to the holidays, what do people need to know about the situation with TSA around the shutdown and then also around where things stand with the benefits of PreCheck or Clear or all these other options folks have to get through security quickly?
Sure, absolutely. I am a big proponent of TSA PreCheck. I've been a member pretty much since the inception of the program. I still find it saves a ton of time at most of the major airports that I pass through and also at the little airports, to be honest. There are some times when you can see the line at TSA PreCheck is longer or the wait time is longer, in which case you can often actually go through the regular security line. You still have TSA PreCheck on your boarding pass, and sometimes they have little handouts that they give you so you don't have to take out your liquids or laptops or take your shoes off and stuff like that. So you might want to think about doing that. I still find it's a tremendous time saver. It's a benefit of many premium travel rewards credit cards that you can pay for your application with the card, and then the application fee is given back to you as a statement credit. So you don't really lose anything by applying. Clear is a different system, as you know, which works with biometrics. It's a private company. So you stand in front of one of the machines, it takes your biometrics, and then you are escorted to the security line. You don't get into the TSA PreCheck line just for having Clear, though. You just get whatever normal level of security you're entitled to. So if you don't have TSA PreCheck, but you do have Clear, you'll go to the head of that regular security line, but you'll still have to do all those things that someone without PreCheck has to do. All
right, Clear's a public company. I'm sure I could have just looked this up, but I will go find out what the percentage of Clear customers are that do not have TSA Pre, because I feel like that's got to be a pretty tight circle. All right, we'll leave it there.
That's a good statistic.
They probably don't want people to know that one, so maybe it's proprietary. All right, Eric Rosen with the Points Guy. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, time now for What to Watch next week. We'll be getting reports from a lot of big box retailers. That includes Walmart, Home Depot, and Target. Also, on the earnings side, all eyes will be on Nvidia. The AI juggernaut is set to announce results for the third quarter on Wednesday. After the market close, investors will be paying particular attention to demand for its Blackwell Ultra AI chips. Now, taking a look at the Federal Reserve, another big batch of Fed commentary is expected, and the central bank will also release the minutes from its October FOMC meeting on Wednesday. This readout will give investors further insight into how policymakers outlined their views on the economy during a meeting that concluded with the Fed cutting interest rates for the second time this year. And the wait is over. The September jobs report will be released after a lengthy delay due to the government shutdown. The BLS announcing late Friday that the September jobs report will be published Thursday morning. That report had been scheduled for release on October 3rd. All right, a little bit of breaking news here on this Friday afternoon. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway making a bet on big tech. Berkshire Hathaway's 13F filing showing that Buffett's firm picked up 17.8 million shares of Alphabet stock in the third quarter. That's valued at just over $4 billion. Alphabet is now Berkshire's 10th largest holding, and this is a departure for the company, which normally focuses on value companies. Charlie Munger, company's former chairman, once saying he wished he had just bought Google stock, Google back in the day. He knew how much they were spending on Geico ads on Google and figured, what was I really missing here? Finally, Berkshire coming in and buying the stock here. Now, in other news, Google is investing $40 billion in data centers in Texas. Its stock on the rise on the news here in late trading on Friday. And that'll do it for the week. Be sure to come back here Monday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern for all your coverage leading up to and after the closing bell. That'll be with Josh Lipton. Everyone have a great weekend.